There's one particular stock in the stock market that I have such a toxic relationship. When I own the stock, all I did all the time was constantly think on almost a daily basis about when am I going to sell this stock? When am I going to sell this? Maybe I should sell this stock. Then when I don't own the stock, all I keep thinking about is I need to own this stock. I got to buy this back. It has huge upside. Like, what am I doing? I'm missing out on a bunch of easy money by not owning this stock. It's an incredibly toxic relationship, and it's definitely one of the most frustrating stocks I've been involved with in quite some time. In regret, by the way, regret is an emotion that involves feeling sad or sorry about a decision or action that was made or not made. And in the stock market, you're going to have regrets over time, right? As the years tick on, as you're an investor, right? And these regrets can be very, very different. ELF, for instance, I regret selling most of my shares back in the day, right? I had, close to 10,000 shares, I believe, of ELF back in the day. And I sold most of those after I'd made my first, 50%, 100%, a couple 100% in the stock. I regret that. I wish I held every freaking share of ELF and never sold any of that stock, right? Palantir, I regret not buying more of that stock. I went probably a little too tame into Palantir, $49,000 in the public count. I look back now and I'm like, I could have easily gone 100K, 200K. Now sitting on the gains we're sitting on, I'm like, I should have gone bigger, right? I regret that. Nike, I regret buying Nike too early. When I got in that stock, I thought it was a very good value, and now I'm down 17.5% on it, down $9,800. I regret buying in too early in regards to Nike, right? SoFi, I'm looking at SoFi stock. I honestly think 2 years from now, I'm going to look back and I'm going to have regrets about not buying more SoFi shares. I have a pretty strong feeling that I'm going to look back and be like, I should have went heavier into SoFi. So regrets, they happen over time, right? And the stock that ultimately comes back to the most regret, the most toxic stock is Nvidia for me. This is a stock I owned a long time ago, made a bunch of little money on it, sold out. Since that time, the stock 10x'd or more. I should have held every share I had of Nvidia back in the day. And then over the past year or so, bought a bunch of Nvidia shares, made a bunch of short-term money, and guess what I did? I ended up selling everything. I sold it all. And I got these are the shares in the public account I had, which was, a decent sized position for me. I made over $11,000. And here I am in a situation now. I have no Nvidia shares. And all I keep thinking about is, I want to own Nvidia. I want to own Nvidia. I want to own Nvidia. And I'm scared I made a big mistake in regards to this one. And this one's about to do a rocket ship ride at 200. Okay. So I want to explain where this regret's coming from, what's going on here, what I'm seeing out there that's really freaking me out in terms of kind of just considering like I'm probably screwed up again and I sold Nvidia way too soon and there's probably a lot to go here. So we're going to cover all those things in this video and show you some of the stuff I'm looking at recently that I'm like, maybe I've made a big mistake here, okay? We don't talk a lot about selling on the channel. We don't, right? If you look at a lot of my videos, they're focused on buying, right? I'm buying this stock. I'm buying this stock. I just bought this stock, right? These stocks are a buy right now. We don't talk a lot about selling. I hope you guys appreciate this video because this is, I think, a big subject, and it's a subject we don't speak about a lot on the channel. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Smash that thumbs up button if you do. That lets me know you enjoy me covering a subject like selling and like trying to figure out, wait, did I make a mistake? Should I buy back in? And all those sorts of things, okay? Because this is a rare video. Make sure you're subscribed as well here to the channel, okay? So, Nvidia, I'm freaked out, okay? I got to be completely honest with you guys. I made a mistake here because there's two universes in which Nvidia operates, okay? There's universe one. Universe one is essentially a situation where Nvidia's best revenue and net income days are in 2024 and 2025, and that's it for them. That's going to be their all-time records. They'll never do better than that. You'll never see better revenues, net incomes, margins, anything like that past 2025, right? And that's a universe I think a lot of people are kind of thinking and operating in, right? They kind of think like this is a super hype cycle in regards to these products. The demand's insane. NVIDIA's able to command these huge price points. And it's never going to be as good as it is right now for the company. And so they see, after 2025, revenues going down, net income going down, margins going down, right? And like the peak, they're already peaked. Like the peak will have already been done at that point in time, right? And that's a universe you could certainly operate in. Then there's a second universe, okay? This universe is NVIDIA's revenue growth slows big time after 2025, right? But the company keeps growing. It keeps the revenues going up over time, the earnings per share, the net income. They keep coming out with game-changing products and services as they've done for the past 30 years now at this point in time, right? And the company grows bigger and bigger and more dominant, and they end up becoming a $5 trillion, $10 trillion company, right? Instead of a $2 or a $3 trillion company. So this is a universe some other people operate in, right? Where they believe that Nvidia has still a long way of growth, right? Now, let me ask you this question. I think this is always a good way of framing it, right? Because I think a lot of people, it's easier to go over to this side. I will be completely honest with you. But if you had to bet your life on it, right? Which one of these two universes do you think is the reality? If you had to bet your life on it, do you think Nvidia's best days are really 2024 and 2025, and from there their revenues and net incomes go down over time and they never reach those peaks again? Or would you say it's more probable that Nvidia's revenues continue to grow after 2025, right? The company keeps growing. They keep coming out with great products and services, right? It's not the end of Nvidia after 2025. I mean, if you had to bet your life on it, I bet you even the bears would choose this over here. I bet you they would. It's very easy to just throw out kind of doomsday for a company, but if you kind of thought about what if my life was dependent upon it, I think you start to think different. You're like, could I really bet my life against Nvidia? I don't know about that, right? You start to think a little bit different, and I bet you the far majority of people would choose this over here. I bet you any money, even the bears would say, you know what? Yeah, I said that. But you know what? I'm choosing this over here. I want to live, right? Now, you also got to ask yourself, Jensen, with all this man's done, would he let this universe play out? Or excuse me, this universe one, would he let this play out where Nvidia peaks and they never do better than that, right? I don't know. I think he's a hard person to bet against, right? Ask anybody to try to bet against him, and it's ultimately not been very well. You might be able to bet on a short-term time frame, like for a 6-month span on the stock or a 12-month span or something like that. But ultimately, you can't bet against this guy long-term. He's like an Elon Musk type fellow that everybody who tries to doubt him, they just always end up on the wrong side of it, right? You can't do it. Like there's very special people. There's very special business people. They're very specially talented, and some of them are just the creme de la creme, and Jensen's definitely that creme de la creme, right? Additionally, look at this. This is over the past 20 years. This is looking at Nvidia stock over the past 20 years. I bet you 99.99% of investors have never looked at Nvidia's 20-year track record in regards to their stock price. They might have looked at a 20-year stock chart. But when you really look at like this, it really starts to put some things into context. First thing, in the past 20 years, there's only been 4 down years for Nvidia stock. 3 of those down years, guess what? They were single digit down. So the stock was down, but it was like hardly down, right? Single digits is like nothing. And of the past 20 years, 2 decades, only 1 year did the stock fall double digits. 1 year out of 20. And you think about everything that transpired in the past 20 years. The great financial crisis and all the mess that came with that. Rona, the late 2018 stock market crash, the chip cycles that would be booming and then busting and booming and busting. You think about all that. And Nvidia on that 20-year span only has 1 double-digit down year in that entire time. That speaks volumes about really how great this company is. But the next part, I think, speaks even bigger volumes. 13 of the past 20 years had double-digit growth in the stock price. Double-digit, 13 of 20 years. That's ridiculous. That might be one of the best. If you look at all stocks the past 20 years, I don't know if I could think of another stock that was up 13 of the past 20 years, double digits. That's special. So when you look at it from that context, keep in mind, just because a company's done certain things in the past does not guarantee they're going to do things in the future. But when a company has a very special employee force and a very special CEO with products and services that continue to impress more and more, and you really think about Nvidia over the past 20 years, the company's gotten better and better and better and specialer, right? More special, we could say. Ooh, that's a pretty tough company to say, you know what, I don't want a piece of that, right? Then we could think about the moat. Warren Buffett always talks about the moat around a business, right? And damn it, you look at Nvidia, I have to say, the moat around Nvidia is by far and away better than it's ever been in Nvidia's history. because of CUDA, because of their software platform, along with the hardware platform, and along with the entire way they put chips together to make data centers. I mean, everything across the board, I gotta say. And then you look at the chips themselves, how impressive they are. Look at the new Blackwell chip. I mean, at the end of the day, I gotta say, NVIDIA's moat is not just better than it's ever been, it's a lot better than it's ever been, right? And that matters for a business substantially. It's the best it's ever been, right? Now, I like to kind of think, well, could we poke holes in the story, right? For something like NVIDIA. Okay, we got all this going for us. Yeah, the stock's been amazing. Yeah, the products are top tier, all these sorts of things. But could I poke a hole somewhere in here? I tried. I really, really did try, right? And I thought about Taiwan. We know the far majority of NVIDIA's chips are, guess where? They're made in Taiwan. And we do know there's something that's kind of been brewing here, right? We don't know how that is going to happen, but what if it did happen, right? What if these guys come on over here and we have a whole situation? Well, that could definitely mess up NVIDIA's numbers in the short term, right? If there was a major disruption in the chip cycle in terms of the production, that could be bad. But I got to be honest with you guys, even that one's a hard one to poke holes through. Yeah, it could cause disruption in the short term, but you got to understand, for the past several years in the United States of America, we've been building out massive semiconductor facilities. This is a TSMC insane campus they've been building in Arizona. This is probably 15 minutes or so away from a rental house I have in Arizona. Not only that, in Chandler, Intel's been building a massive $20 billion plant as well, right? And so you got to keep in mind, like the infrastructure is all being put in place that if this does happen, like in the US, we're ready to rock and roll when it comes to producing these chips. And there's a big question if that's ever even going to happen. But if it does, sure, it could disrupt supply chains and stuff in the short term. But honestly, it's looking pretty dang good. Like things are set up very well. So that's a hard one to even poke a hole at to really hurt numbers for years. It's like maybe that could hurt numbers in the short term, right? Maybe NVIDIA would get even more pricing power, by the way, in regards to that situation. Completely random side note. I did just want to show you guys this because I thought it was interesting. This is in regards to TSMC facility they're building in Arizona, right? Which is like ridiculous. The American engineers complained of rigid counterproductive hierarchies of the company, talking about TSMC, the Taiwanese company. TSMC veterans described American counterparts as lacking the kind of dedication and obedience they believe is the foundation of their company's world-leading success, right? So the Taiwanese are basically saying, y'all a bunch of lazy bums in America, and the American engineers are saying, you guys do business kind of dumb. Like, you guys don't have your businesses set up the best, right? So, I don't know, maybe there's some truth in both those sides, but it's just interesting to see the culture clash that's going on between TSMC and, American workers and those sorts of things. Completely random side note. It really has nothing to do with this video much, but I just thought it was interesting to show that, right? Now, not only is it in Arizona, it's not like in Arizona is the only place they're building out semiconductor facilities right now. It's actually happening all over the United States of America. And these are all getting built. Some of them are ready to rock and roll this year. Some of them are going to be next year. Some of them are going to be 2026. So the moral of the story is in regards to if this does transpire, messes up things a little bit in the short term for maybe 6 months, 12 months. But honestly, it's been very de-risked now at this point in time because all these facilities getting ready to be up and running now or over the next couple years here, right? Now, additionally, this freaked me out big time in regards to thinking, man, maybe I just sold this one too soon, right? Larry Ellison, the Oracle, the big dog at Oracle, right? One of the richest people in the world, one of the most powerful people in the world. He said that he went to dinner. It was him, Elon Musk, and Jensen. They went to Nobu in Palo Alto, and he bragged that he picked up the bill, okay? Listen, he said the dinner was basically just him and Elon Musk begging Jensen to take their money and give them more chips. That's what the dinner consisted of, right? That freaks me out a little bit. That makes me say, damn, I think I might have sold this one too soon here. I think I might have took profits early again in regards to this for the second time, right? What do these guys all have in common? Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, Mark Zuckerberg. other than they're just all ridiculously rich with these insane net worths, right? What do these guys all have in common? Bill Gates, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Steve Ballmer. They all have something in common outside of being insanely rich. And it's the fact that these guys, companies, Tesla, right? And obviously Elon Musk, AI side as well. Amazon, Oracle, Meta, Microsoft, Google, guess what? They're all begging number 14 to take their money. Begging him. Not like, could we get some chips? No, like on their knees, begging the man for chips. Begging. These are the most powerful men in the world. These are the richest people in the world with the most powerful companies in the world. And they're begging this guy to take their money. You know how special your product's got to be for these sorts of individuals to be like, please, daddy, take our money. We need what you got. You're the best, right? That's damn special. That's special. When you can have the most powerful men in the world get on their knees and beg for your product. That's something that makes me say, I don't know, like Nvidia's probably a pretty special company, right? Now, we've seen this before in American history. We've seen this before, actually. You know where we saw it before? Right here, Rockefeller. Rockefeller was an individual in which he had what the world really wanted. He had what all these other business titans wanted. He had the oil. And the oil was very special back in those days. You know, now we look at it just as another random commodity, right? Big deal. Back in those days, oil was very, very special. And Mr. Oil's net worth went to ridiculous levels. They're saying Rockefeller's estimated $1.4 billion net worth in 1937 was equivalent to 1.5% of the United States GDP. Of the United States GDP was his net worth, right? I did some math on this. So this would be equivalent of somebody being worth $405 billion here today. We don't even have anybody remotely close to worth $405 billion here today, right? But that goes to show you, like, when you have somebody that's really like special like this and they have such a in-need product that all the other most powerful people in the world want that product. And I can tell you, back in those days, all the other most powerful people in the world, they all wanted what Mr. Rockefeller had at that particular time, right? And so I'm looking at this Jensen situation, and it reminds me a lot of kind of studying back at that time period in what Rockefeller had there. It was unbelievable, right? So yeah, I think that speaks volumes, because I've never seen this before. We've never seen this in modern times where the most powerful people in the world were begging a CEO to give them a certain product, right? We've never really seen that. This is new. This is like special, right? Now, here's the deal. You look at Nvidia's valuation, right? And you can't say the stock's expensive. The stock price went up a lot, but just because the stock price goes up a lot doesn't mean it's expensive. You have to look at how much actual net income, how much in earnings per share is a company producing and likely going to produce in the future. And when you look at Nvidia, it's a hard stock to say it's actually expensive. It's trading at a 55 trillion PE. Okay, the market trades at what, 20-ish? Somewhere in the 20s, right? Okay, Nvidia is like growing so much more substantially than the average stock in the stock market. And not only that, they're arguably the most powerful company in the entire world. They're no average stock. They're no average company. So Nvidia should command a ridiculously high valuation compared to peers, or not even peers. I guess there really is no peer for Nvidia, than really anybody else in the stock market. Look at a forward P, 48. Okay, a little over 2x maybe the market. Big deal. Look at the growth rates. They're not even on the same stratosphere. 2-year forward P on Nvidia, 33. Trailing 12-month earnings per share growth, 407%. Current year expected earnings per share growth, 230%. And next year is the big slowdown, right? Which it is a big slowdown, but they're still expected to do 34% earnings per share growth. And a lot of companies out there are happy to do like 8%, 10%. Never mind, 34%? Next year, revenue growth expected 34%, when most stocks, many stocks in the stock market are trying to do 5%. So let's get this right. Nvidia is basically growing revenue by about 7x, 6x or 7x, kind of an average stock. But yet their 2-year forward P is only maybe not even 2x above an average stock, or around a 2x, right? And then you also got to take into account the fact that this is arguably the most special company in the world, just to be honest, right? And then you start to say, dang, man, maybe, just maybe, the stock's not expensive. Maybe it's actually cheap. And if we look, right, I wanted to compare them against two other stocks that get talked about quite a bit, right? Palantir and Tesla. Compare to Palantir and Tesla. Though Palantir and Tesla are two stocks I own. 2-year forward P on Palantir, 85. We'll see if that comes true, by the way. They might be more profitable than they have there. But let's say even Palantir, let's say Palantir is quite a bit more profitable. So let's say 2-year forward P is 70. Okay. Nvidia's 33. And keep in mind, Nvidia might beat those numbers, right? Tesla's 54. So at the end of the day, if you compare Nvidia versus Tesla and Palantir, I mean, it's just pretty clear that Nvidia looks like the steal deal of that bunch, right? Additionally, look at the trailing 12-month revenue. Nvidia's smacking them. Current year expected earnings per share growth. Nvidia's smacking them. Next year, revenue growth expected. Nvidia's smacking them. So even I look at something like this and I'm like, okay, I own these two stocks and I love them, but Nvidia honestly looks cheaper than both those stocks. So it's hard for me not to want to own this baby. When at the end of the day, the numbers are what the numbers are. Like, what can we say about that, right? Now, additionally, you look at the earnings history in regards to this company over the past 7 quarters. I was looking at the last 7 quarters here. And Nvidia's beat on earnings per share and they beat on revenue 7 quarters in a row. Double beats, right? And you look at kind of their beats here as far as revenue goes, right? I mean, they're beating by at least $1 billion every quarter. For the last 5 quarters, they beat here $2.4 billion, $2 billion, 1.56, 1.48, 1.29. The only bad thing you can say about that is the beats are getting smaller, right? From 2.4 down to 2, down to 1.5, down to 1.4, down to 1.2. That's the only bad thing you say is the beats are smaller than they used to be, right? But at the end of the day, they're still beats. They're still incredible. But this is the game of Wall Street, right? The game of Wall Street is kind of this game of like, well, they need to beat by even more than that. Like their beats are not getting as big. But at the end of the day, it's still insane that they're beating almost quarter in and quarter out by over $1 billion. Jeez. Now, if we run some scenarios here on kind of valuation in regards to Nvidia to try to figure out like, is a stock a deal? Is it setting up for a good compounding annual growth rate? I wanted to kind of put a disaster scenario here together for Nvidia. And in this disaster scenario, I have revenue growth only 10% per year, 2025 through 2028. Look at this here. I have net income growth, 10%. This is be a disaster for Nvidia. Like this would mean, I honestly, demand went south fast if they can only do 10% on average for the next many, many years, especially given the fact that their software revenue is going to likely build out strong over the next few years. Given that at the end of the day, these massive companies are really showing no signs of letting go of spending on these chips, right? I don't know, something to consider here. So this is kind of a disaster scenario. And then I have them only commanding a 20 to 30 PE ratio. In that sort of situation, like Nvidia is not an own right now if it was a disaster like that, right? You get the compounding annual growth rate would be negative if that scenario played out. And so if that's a scenario plays out and it's a disaster for Nvidia, yeah, Nvidia is not going to be a good stock. Now, keep in mind, like it's not like Nvidia goes bankrupt or the stock goes down like, 90% or something like that, or 80%. No, like it's just, you're not going to make money in the stock over the next few years if you buy Nvidia stock here today in that sort of disaster scenario. But once again, how realistic is this disaster scenario to play out? I don't know. Like the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, maybe that is tough to play out with how many chips these guys are ordering from Nvidia, right? And are likely committed to. Now, we run maybe a little bit more of a realistic scenario, maybe sleepy for Nvidia. Let's say 20% revenue growth on average and 20% net income. So they don't really get any extra kind of bump up in regards to their net income margins. They kind of stay flattish around 55%, which by the way are legendary net income margins, like legendary. So if you're doing 20s and 20s there, right? You're going to be able to command somewhere between about a 30p on the low end, very low end, and then a 50p probably on the higher end for somebody like an Nvidia, right? If you've grown 20% year in and year out. I might be a little low with those P ratios there, but I'd always rather go a little low than a little high. And in this sort of scenario, Nvidia is a moneymaker over the next, let's call it 4 years or so. 2028 on the low end, that's a 4% CAGR, which would be pretty disappointing. But if you're growing 20% on average a year, you should be able to command over a 30p. It should be like 40 plus. But on the high end, if you can command around a 50, that's an 18% CAGR on Nvidia. And remember, this is kind of a sleepy scenario. 20% revenue growth, 20% earnings per share, it's a little sleepy there, right? Now, let's bump it up a little bit. Let's say 30%, right? 30% revenue growth, 30% net income growth, right? If you're doing 30s, top line, bottom line, on average a year, year after year after year, right? You're going to command a PE somewhere in the 40 to 70 range, right? Pretty easily. Now, this would put us at a compounding annual growth rate on the low end of about 21% and on the high end of about 39%. So, my little guy just walked in the room. Hold your horses. So compounding annual growth rate here of 21% and 39% would be pretty darn impressive, right? And is it impossible for Nvidia to do that over the next few years? If you believe the AI cycle is still early days, right? Which, keep in mind, this AI kind of boom cycle in regards to chips just really took off in really the back half of last year. That is something to kind of keep in mind here, right? Nvidia stock was already moving in the first half of the year, but the numbers hadn't really started to pick up big time. It was in the back half of 2023 that the numbers started to go crazy. So in reality, guys, we're probably about 1 year, as of right now, 1 year into the AI cycle in regards to chips, right? So if you believe it's only like a 2-year cycle, then there's probably no chance they're going to hit these sorts of numbers. If you believe this AI chip cycle, this super cycle, lasts 5, 6, 7 years, then honestly, this is a potential that they could do like the 30% plus clip, which would put their revenues in 2028 at like a $283 billion number. Net income at about $157 billion in this scenario. P's of 40 to 70 if you're growing at those sorts of rates. And once again, get a compounding annual growth rate there about 21% on the low end and about 39% on the high end, right? It's a potential, right? Now, additionally, they just signed off on this $50 billion buyback. You got to understand, Nvidia is going to make so much money over the next few years. It's going to be ridiculous. Like, absolutely ridiculous. They're not going to know what to do with all the money. Like, literally, it's going to be so much money, they're not going to know what to do with it all. So imagine the amount of shares Nvidia is going to be able to take off the market over the next 5 years. Given the fact that the amount of money this company is going to produce on the bottom line is going to be astronomically high, right? Like, astronomically high. Even if you run Nvidia at some pretty lame growth rates, still the amount of money this company is going to produce is ridiculous, right? In 2025, their net income's almost guaranteed. Nothing's a guarantee, right? But it's almost guaranteed to be up way more than 2024. That's something we do know, right? Question marks about 26, 27. We'll see. But even in 26, 27, let's say they were even flat. Let's say literally they couldn't grow revenue in 26, 27. Well, gosh. They're still going to produce a ridiculous amount of cash flow on the bottom line, right? The net income is going to be off the charts, and they're still going to be able to do ridiculous share buybacks if they want. So that's just a little food for thought in regards to that, right? But then I want to try to poke a hole in my case, and I look at Jensen. He's selling tens of millions of dollars of the stock almost every single week. Like, literally, you can see, look at this. Look when I zoom in here. Jensen, he's selling left and right? 13 million, 14 million. Like, it's a lot of money. His share count's going down from 77 million shares down to 75 million. And so that's one of those things you look at and you're like, if Jensen really believes this is going to be a multi-year super cycle and we got $1 trillion of data centers to upgrade, why is he selling tens of millions of dollars of stock every week, right? I think that's a fair question. But on the flip side, I could also look and point out pretty much every big tech CEO selling stock over time. And ultimately, actually, every time they ever sold stock, it was a wrong move. If you ever look at Benioff and all the shares he sold to Salesforce, he probably regrets every share he ever sold. But these guys, they do have sometimes very lavish lifestyles. And ultimately, when is a time to sell as a CEO? Like, if you want to cash out shares, let's say you want $1 billion of cash around, right, or a couple $1 billion, right? Because you want to buy a yacht and this mansion and you want to give to this charity and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So when's the right time to sell? Is the right time to sell when your stock's crashing? Or is the right time to sell when your stock's skyrocketing? Common sense at the end of the day says, like, sell when the stock's flying high, right? Like, you can't really look at it and say, well, that means they think the stock's going to crash. No. Because otherwise you would never be able to sell, right? Because if you can't sell when your stock's crashing, because that looks horrible, plus who wants to sell at a crash price? Like, that's not smart. Zuckerberg sells at $88 a share when Meadows, 88 in 2022. It's not too smart, right? So one is just dumb, right? Two, if you aren't allowed to sell when your stock's going up a bunch or sell when your stock's going down a bunch, well, then you can never sell. So then you can never do whatever you want to do, whether it's go buy the mansions or go on the yachts or get the new private planes or do any of that stuff, right? So you do need to sell over time, right? And then we know the tax bills and all those sorts of things, right? It's something you have to consider. So when I look at Jensen's sales there, I'm kind of like, gosh, I could point out Zuckerberg selling shares years ago, and I could point out so many different people. Amazon, Jeff Bezos. And at the end of the day, usually every share these guys sell in these sorts of companies is they would have been better just holding it all in stock, right? But they got lifestyles to live just like we all do, right? Now, here's the deal. 1 month ago, I will say, like, when I sold those shares, I was like, I feel good about this. I made a bunch of money. I feel good. I feel content, right? And I would say probably under a 10% probability I would have bought the shares back. Today, as I sit here in this chair, I would say it's like a 50-50 if I'm going to buy Nvidia stock back. Like, it's a 50-50 now at this point in time because of everything I'm looking at. And when I'm just like, it's ridiculous, man. Like, how can I say no to a company when the stock doesn't actually trade expensive, when you got the most powerful men in the world begging this guy for more. And when the company's proven that they can just come out with next game-changing product, and I'm like, who's going to say it just stops now? Like who's going to say Nvidia just stops producing like great products and services, right? And then when you don't really have a direct competitor, the more I study on the industry, the more I'm like, they don't. Intel's not a really direct competitor. Broadcom's not really a direct competitor. AMD's not even really a direct competitor. And so I'm like, ooh, that's tough. That's tough, right? Now, it's interesting because Apple, if you ever kept track of Apple stock over time, there was always a great saying in regards to Apple. It's own it, don't trade it, right? And that's always kind of been the Apple way. Nvidia's been different over time. Nvidia's kind of been more of a stock like, you could trade it, right? Because these goes through these big chip cycles up and down. And, one moment Nvidia stock's booming and it's up 100%. Next moment it's down big, 30, 50%. But at the end of the day, those drops in the stock are not nearly as much as people think. It's only had, in the past 20 years, it's only had 1 year where the stock fell, double digits, 1 year. So even that saying about, well, Nvidia goes through these chip cycles that are boom and bust, sure, but the stock really doesn't. It really doesn't. 1 year and 20 years where you were down double digit, and that double digit drop, by the way, was lame. Let's go back here. How much was that double digit drop? 16%? That's the worst. That's the worst Nvidia did in 20 years. And that was in the great financial crisis, 2008. Oh my gosh, the stock fell 16%? And that's the worst you have to show? Oh my gosh, right? That's pretty damn impressive there. It's pretty damn impressive. So Nvidia ultimately, it might start to move into a category of own it, don't trade it. And if it starts to move into this category over the next year or two of own it, don't trade it, it will command higher P ratios, as Apple does nowadays. And if their services side of their business, right, their software business continues to build out, the revenue's there, guess what? It's going to become an own and don't trade it stock, which will command higher valuations, right? Listen, guys, I got a really good video I produced for you, a 52-minute video. Produced this one 12 days ago. Make sure you watch that one if you haven't yet. 16 years of stock market advice in 52 minutes. That one's going to cover a lot of subjects. If you enjoyed a video like this here today, you'll definitely enjoy that video immensely. If you're looking to apply, join our private stock group, pin comment down there. You can click on that and apply to join us in there. We see if we can get you access maybe next week or the week after. That's access to my private stock group, private wealth group, all my best course curriculums teaching you everything I got up here, access to 1000xstocks.com, and all that good stuff. And you also get to see the moves I'm making in my big dog portfolio, 2.3 mil plus in that portfolio. So, alrighty, guys, we'll see. We'll see. I'll keep you informed if I buy back. I would say it's a 50-50 now at this point in time. We'll see, man. Nvidia stock's treated me well over time. It's been a moneymaker for me. But I always look at it and I'm like, it could be even a bigger moneymaker. Alrighty, guys, appreciate you joining me. Much love and have a great day.